Did I do my makeup specifically for this video topic? The world may never know, but yeah, I did. I know what you all are probably thinking. You're probably like, I thought Marina was really incredibly cool. Why is she into Twilight? And I know exactly why that is an assumption that you might make about me. Boy. You know what? Let's just move on from the fact that Marina used to be a really big Twilight fan in high school, and upon rereading the books, I think I still am. But we all know that there are many problematic aspects to Twilight, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So recently, Stephenie Meyer released a gender-swapped version of Twilight for the 10th anniversary edition, and she named it Life and Death, which, like, first of all, could you try any less hard to come up with a name? This was in response to the feminist, just like general criticism that Twilight is kind of sexist, and Bella is a damsel in distress, and her relationship with Edward is really controlling and kind of abusive. And the point that Stephenie Meyer was trying to make is that if you swap the genders of all the characters, because apparently there's only 2 genders, then nothing changes, so it can't possibly be sexist. So I was very excited to get my hands on Life and Death, because A, it was an excuse for me to reread Twilight, and B, gender is kind of a thing we talk about on the show, if you haven't noticed. I know, it's like a pretty subtle theme. So the question of the day is the new gender swap Twilight feminist? And the answer is no. Just no, it's not. The problem with the new Twilight, and I'm not going to call it Life and Death because I will not stand for this, is that it simply reproduces gender roles rather than critically analyzing them. So I'm gonna get a little feminist theory up in here. So in order to analyze this through a feminist lens, we need to understand gender roles and socialization. I have a whole video on the patriarchy that I can direct you to, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna make this real simple. Men and women are socialized differently, meaning we raise girls and boys to ascribe to certain sets of roles and norms according to their gender that they're assigned at birth. So for example, we typically teach men to be more aggressive and assertive and to go after what they want. Whereas we tell women to be polite and quiet and nurturing and not to take up too much space or to be too bossy. Obviously, men and women and people of all genders are incredibly varied, and socialization doesn't necessarily determine response. But it does influence people a great deal, probably more than most people would like to believe. So, for example, when a man acts aggressively or takes charge, he's just simply reproducing the gender roles that society reinforces. Whereas when a woman is aggressive and takes charge, she is subverting those gender roles. She's actively going against her socialization and, deciding to do what she wants. So when Stephenie Meyer says that swapping gender doesn't do anything, it's pretending that we live in a post-feminist society. Post-feminist means that gender doesn't matter, and the decisions that men and women make are made in a vacuum, and there's no socialization involved, and sexism doesn't exist, basically. That's what post-feminism is. And even though Stephenie Meyer is making this assertion in interviews and even in the foreword of the book, the way she writes, the characters differently shows that she doesn't actually believe that gender doesn't matter. I think it was really interesting just looking at the things that Stephenie Meyer decided to change or the things that she decided to add to the book, because a lot of the time the only reason they were there was for gender purposes. One example of this is when Beau's character, who is the male version of Bella from Twilight, he has a little altercation. My foot caught on the lip of the exit door and the bag swung out and hit the guy trying to get in. Oh, sorry. The guy wasn't much older than me and he was a lot shorter, but he stepped up to my chest with his chin raised high. I could see his tattoos on both sides of his neck. Which just seemed like a weird thing to add. Dude Bella accidentally runs into another man and he basically puffs up his chest and tries to start a fight with him, kind of. But then he realizes that Beau is with his dad, who is a police officer, so he kind of backs off. But it's just interesting because that doesn't happen in Twilight. It's also odd because Stephenie Meyer sort of tweaks Beau's relationship with his mom for I can only assume gendered reasons. In Twilight, the way that Bella describes her mother is much more sympathetic, and although Bella kind of takes care of her mom, who is not the most responsible mother, she's typically, kinder about it and not a huge dick. But the way that Beau describes his relationship with his mom is that he's kind of dominating and patriarchal, and he's the one that has to take care of all her shit. It's just, I don't know, it didn't sit well with me. I'd been taking care of my mom for my whole life. I mean, I'm sure there must have been a time, probably when I was still in diapers, that I wasn't in charge of the bills and paperwork and cooking and general level-headedness, but I couldn't remember it. Was leaving my mom to fend for herself really the right thing to do? Of course she had Phil these days, so the bills would probably get paid on time. There would be food in the fridge, gas in the car, and someone to call when she got lost. Which just kind of gives you the sense that Beau's mom can only function as an adult person if she has a man taking care of her. Whereas Bella's relationship with her mother was a little bit more companionate and respectful. There's also a difference when Beau is describing the standards that are placed on him as a teenage boy. But there was no hiding the fact that I was not that guy. Not the football star, not the class president, not the bad boy on the motorcycle. I was the kid who was too quiet and too pale, who didn't know anything about gaming or cars or baseball statistics, or anything else I was supposed to be into. It's really interesting to me that Stephenie Meyer has been so adamant about the gender swap having no effect on this book. But at the same time, the changes she makes clearly acknowledge that there are different standards placed on men and women. Something that really bothered me was that in Twilight, there are multiple scenes where Bella comes home and she starts crying. But because Beau is a boy, he's not allowed to cry. So instead, it says, "I didn't sleep well that night, even after I finally got my head to shut up." Bella's chapter was, "I didn't sleep well that night, and I cried myself to sleep." Why can't we just let Beau cry? He's a sensitive young man, and he's going through stuff. Hey, Clem, stop it. There's so much more I have to say, but the last thing I'm going to mention is that Edith, who is Edward Cullen's gender-swapped character, it's really bothersome because when Bella describes Edward, she describes him as hostile, looking upset, moody, but that's kind of the extent of it. Whereas when Beau is describing Edith, he uses a lot of violent terminology. He says things like, "It looked like she wanted to murder me. I was afraid that she was gonna put a gun to my head and shoot me. She had a murderous look in her eyes." It's just really interesting to me because Edward's character is not written in a violent way. There's not these gruesome metaphors used to describe him. So I wonder if that's an acknowledgement of the issue of violence against women, because I do think that if Edward were written in that way, would it change things? Probably. So my cat just completely knocked over my camera and my microphone and everything, and I don't have time to film the rest of this video because I gotta go. I didn't get to talk about everything that I wanted to talk about, unfortunately, but have any of you read the new Twilight, or is it just me? It's probably just me. If so, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's feminist, or is it just really questionable? Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one. Also, this is completely voluntary, but if you would like to help support this channel and Feminist Fridays, then please consider donating to my Patreon page, which will be linked below. Hey, stop it!